Well, afternoon, everyone. Bill Rentschler in the 1011 Now streaming studio, bringing you, I think, a really interesting interview with a freelance writer for the Flatwater Free Press, Tim Trudell. He wrote an article last week about the Oakland Creature, a mysterious creature that was seen about 50 years ago in Oakland, Nebraska. And we're going to bring him in here live via Zoom. Tim, thank you for joining us. How are you doing today? Well, it's kind of gray. It's kind of, it's a Monday out there today, but we're getting by. So, Tim, first, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? You're a freelance writer. This article in the Flatwater Free Press, but you've written for the Omaha World Herald and a bunch of different publications.
Life magazine, Nebraska magazine, which used to be Rural Electric Nebraska, living here Midwest out of Neely. Omaha magazine I've written for NPR's Next Avenue. And I also write, I'm a regular contributor to TravelAwaits.com for travel writing.
All right, and so this
article, my wife and I have,
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say my wife and I have also co-authored a number of books, 100 Things to Do in Omaha Before You Die, Nebraska, and then Unique Eats and Eateries of Omaha.
So I bet maybe visiting Oakland, Nebraska to learn more about the Oakland Creatures on your list of 100 Things to Do in Nebraska Before You Die.
It should be, yes. And when visiting Oakland, maybe search for the creature.
Search the cornfields.
Yes.
So just a little background. Oakland, Nebraska, you take Highway 77 north, about an hour and a half north of Lincoln. You're just east of West Point, just north of Fremont, and just west of Tacoma, right on Highway 77.
Yep,
not
correct.
a big town.
Spot on.
1,300 people or so, but a big mystery.
Yes. Well, Oakland is also the Swedish capital of Nebraska.
Can't forget the Swedes.
There you go. Could never forget them.
So
I wouldn't be doing my due diligence.
We have the Polish capital, and now we have the Swedish capital. I'm not sure what other capitals we have in Nebraska, but I'm sure there are more.
Oh gosh, we have plenty. Trust me.
So you wrote this article last week about the Oakland Creature.
Yes.
Can you kind of fill people in about what that is?
Yes. In the summer of 1974, I happened to live there at that time. I was a child, and we lived in Oakland for about 5 years. That was during that time. During the summer of '74, a farmer just south of town, he and his wife heard a shrill, a call, a scream, however you want to describe it, that made their blood curdle. They never heard anything like that before. They've never heard anything like that since. So he was afraid. Dale and Linda Jones are the couple. Dale was concerned that one of their pigs had got its head caught, maybe in the fence, in the pen. So he took a flashlight, went out to check on it, and checked, and the pigs are good. So he starts to head back, and he's walking back, and then his wife is trying to hold back their dog, a German Shepherd, who was just barking. She could not get him to quiet down. And he just stood on the porch, kept barking, and then she looks up, and then she sees this giant figure running through, past their corn crib into the cornfield. So Dale goes in and gets a baseball bat. He didn't have a gun, so he went in and get a baseball bat in case it was a wild animal. And so he searched and didn't see anything, but that scream or that shrill, really set them off. And so they went inside, they locked their windows, they locked their doors. And this is the middle of summer, July 4th. So, it's hot, it's humid. they, 1974, not every house had air conditioning. Theirs did not. So, here's this young couple with not knowing what's outside. So they secure their house, and it's a sweat lodge there, and they don't sleep that night because they're fearful of what it is. And so after that,
go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, after that, then, word spread around town. And then all of a sudden there are sightings, throughout the summer. People kept hearing the shrill. And my father, actually, my brother reminded me of this. I had forgotten it. But my dad, who he worked in Fremont, so he left before the sun came up. Well, we lived on the northern edge of town. Across the street from us was a ravine, so you're at, it's country on the west side of us. And so apparently my dad heard that shrill, and he said that, again, nothing like he'd ever heard before. It kind of worried him, so he hurried into the car to get going.
Well, and in the article, I mean, you interview a number of people, including some former law enforcement from the area. So, you know, this isn't just, Dale and Linda's account. You interviewed multiple people who say they heard this.
Yes. And actually, a childhood friend of mine, Nick Wickstrom, he and his family, his dad and he and his brother were out delivering papers out in the country. And Nick said he recalled seeing, a large animal running next to the car. And he said it looked like a human. It looked like he had human legs and was running on his front knuckles. And he said, it couldn't have been a human at that point because, a human doesn't run like that. And so he was like, I don't know what I saw for sure. He joked that it could have been a giant possum for all he knew. But yeah, article, it was cited by quite a few.
In the article, you quote, I think it's Nick. It says, we were country kids. We could identify just about every critter out there, but this one was different.
Yes. He said he had no idea what it was. He didn't know what it resembled, and again, never saw anything like that again. So it was quite the summer in Oakland. So
what prompted you? I mean, this was almost 50 years ago. So what prompted you to write the article last week?
Well, it was kind of funny. Matthew Hansen, the editor, he had sent out a note to the writers saying, if you've got, any story ideas for us. He was looking for some fresh material for March and April. And my brother is actually taking one of my older brothers to a medical appointment. And, he got to talking about it. He was like, hey, do you remember her? And I was like, well, vaguely, I was a kid. And he's like, oh, yeah, so he starts reminding me about it. And I was like, that might make an interesting story. So I sent a note to Matthew, and next thing I know, I'm up in Oakland doing some interviews.
So how long did it take you to put everything together?
Well, I actually started the first part of February talking with the Joneses. And then, I reached out to some other people who I knew may have had contact or may have heard or seen it. And some didn't want to, go on record. Some people had forgotten about it. So lining up the sources to visit with took a little bit of time, but really I probably spent a total of about a month to a month and a half on it.
And again, it's not just folks from Oakland. You have some quotes in here from Andy Norman, who's a professor at Carnegie Mellon at the University of Pittsburgh. Yes. He kind of talks about, Bigfoot sightings and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he actually specializes in conspiracy theories, the unknown. So like Bigfoot, QAnon theories, things that people, conspiracy theories. He researches, what leads people to think a certain way, react a certain way. And, so he tries to base his thoughts on in logic. But, he did say, though, that during if he had been a kid, if he had lived in Oakland at that time, he would have been intrigued and probably would have went hunting for it, searching for it to see if it existed or not.
And so I know the Jones, you say in the article, to this day, they're not sure what it was, but, some
Correct.
people have come out and said, likely a mountain lion. But the Jones say, I don't know.
No, right, because Dale said, like he knows what a mountain lion sounds like, and he just doesn't think it was that. But Sheriff Konarski, who served 20 years as Burke County Sheriff, he's retired now, but he said, there was a drought. Even Dale said, there was a drought that summer, and so there were no footprints, paw prints, anything like that. So, but it's likely if it was a mountain lion, he probably followed. It probably followed Logan Creek, for along the water source, searching for a food source.
That would make sense. So, but after writing the article, you lived there.
Yeah.
I guess kind of what are your thoughts nearly 50 years later?
I have learned through life that I don't discard everything, and I don't believe everything. So you got to do your research. And honestly, I sincerely believe people believe they saw what they saw, they heard what they heard. Now, is there a logical explanation? Perhaps, but even Andy said we haven't cataloged every creature known, because we don't know every creature yet, but then he also follows that with, if Bigfoot exists, surely there would be fossil remains somewhere, and somebody would have come across them. But I do know people do sincerely believe in these things, and who am I to say they're wrong, because people they saw something, they heard something, but what it is, who knows for sure. But it was definitely an interesting story, and the funny part is that they heard it for a good 60 to 90 days, from about July 4th to about the middle to late September. And the Jones said after the weather started to cool, then they didn't hear it anymore. So it could have been a wild animal that came in during the summer and then moved on. But we don't know for sure.
But never again has anyone, past that 2-month period, has anyone reported anything, heard anything like that?
Right. And that story just faded. It was big news in the summer. Almost every Nebraska media outlet covered it one fashion or another, and and everyone did treat it. When I researched it, the news articles were very serious. They approached it in a serious manner. The TV stations, when they brought up their reporters, one of my brother's girlfriends was interviewed, and they handled it very seriously, and there wasn't any mocking or making light of the situation. It was addressed as a serious matter, because we also at that time had cattle mutilations going on in the area, and but those were done, as Sheriff Konarski said, those were precise cuts. So the likelihood of a wild animal doing that is very highly unlikely.
And you mentioned that in the article with those cattle mutilations in the area. It all kind of, if you want to, you can make it all kind of fit together.
Yes, you could, very much so.
And so one other thing I wanted to touch on, because it's fun to believe. It's fun to believe in these things.
Sure.
But when you interviewed the professor, he said, sometimes people have to believe in these things because it, kind of makes them feel better or gives them sort of psychological help.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And I think his his take on that was, people are looking for something to believe in, and if that fits their mindset at the time, then it's real to them.
Absolutely. Would you go looking for it?
Would I? Gosh, no. Nope.
I think I'm right there with you. I don't think I would go looking for it
Yeah.
either. I would have done what the
Yeah.
Joneses did. I would have shut the door. I would have locked the windows, and I would have sweated it out that night.
Oh, I hear you. Definitely.
And my last question, in the article you mentioned there's 3 TV stations that came up
Yes.
to do stories on this.
Yes.
1011. Do you remember, was 1011 one of those stations?
I don't believe so. I think they were all the Omaha stations.
Well, we missed out then.
Now they may have, but but as far as what I have gathered, they weren't involved with it.
Well, we're 50 years later. We're doing it now. So
There you go. There you go.
So, any more interesting stories kind of in the works that we can look for?
I have an idea I'm floating around in my head that I need to run by them and see what they think. But yeah, I've got a few that I'm working on with different outlets too.
Well, one of those outlets, obviously, is the Flatwater Free Press. It's a
Yes.
nonprofit newspaper based out of Omaha. Again, they have some really good stories. Tim's story, and then obviously some other more hard-hitting news stories. And
Yes.
you can find them at flatwaterfreepress.org. And Tim, we can find you on there every now and then, and like you just mentioned, with some other
Yes.
publications as well.
Yes.
Awesome. Anything else you want to throw in there?
No, sir. I appreciate the time. I appreciate your interest.
Thank you so much, Tim. Thanks, everyone, for watching from the 1011 Now streaming studio. Love to bring you more content like this, that really fun and interesting. So appreciate you, Tim.